Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it.
Hello, it's Mel here, Community Manager and Nutritionist here at Natural Super Kids. Today we are celebrating our 100th episode, which is a really exciting milestone. We are really proud to have reached 100 episodes, and we recently celebrated 100,000 downloads. So thank you so much to everyone who tunes in every week and listens to Jess's podcast. So we thought we would swap things around today, and I would interview Jess for something different. So welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Hello, Mel. This feels so weird being on the other side of the interview.
I know. It's very strange.
It is, but I'm excited. I'm excited to share and answer some of these questions.
Yeah, so we asked our listeners and also our club members, and then also people who follow us on social media, just a couple of questions that they wanted me to ask Jess. And we aim to kind of keep this away from your typical kind of like ask the naturopath questions, and we wanted to do more of a personal approach. So our listeners have let us know a couple of questions, which we will ask throughout this episode.
Yay, let's get into it.
All right. So the first one has come through, and that is, what is your favorite kind of holiday?
Oh, I'm so ready for a holiday right now. So
We all
any holiday will do right now. But I love travel. I think working from home, when I have time off, I just really love to get away. So even throughout COVID, I would book these little getaways within South Australia, because that's where I live. Just to get out of that everyday routine. But my favorite type of holiday is definitely something that includes some adventure, lots of time outside, out in nature. Some of my friends think I'm crazy. Like, I love multi-day backpacking, hiking trips. I love camping, spending time at the beach, and also disconnecting. So we have a rule in our family that when we go away, we limit our time. It used to be absolutely no screen time at all, but now the kids are older, it's getting harder. And sometimes I have to check in on work things occasionally, but we keep screens to a minimum. And I think that's why I love camping so much, because if you stay in a cabin or stay in an Airbnb, the TV goes on at night, even if it's just a movie. But when you're camping and out in nature, that doesn't happen. So yeah, that's definitely my kind of holiday that I love.
Yeah, this isn't on the list, but I know that you're going away for these upcoming holidays. So did you want to let us know where you're going and what the plan is? And also, I guess, more so into how you, now that you have teenagers, traveling with teenagers and kids, like how you say that they get to choose an adventure or an activity that they really like to do.
Yes. So we are off to Tasmania in January. And the prime kind of reason we're going to Tasmania, one, I've never been to Tasmania. I've traveled a lot, but I've never been to Tasmania, which is quite embarrassing. But also my son, who is almost 15, he's 15 next week actually, loves mountain biking. Like, that's his thing. And so we are taking the mountain bikes. Well, the boys are taking theirs, and we're hiring a car, and we are traveling around to some of the really good mountain bike parks in Tasmania. And yeah, when we are planning holidays, I love to get the kids involved as well. Now that they're older, they don't love the hiking holidays, unfortunately. So this holiday, my son obviously had a lot to do with planning. And our last one, my daughter chose, and that was just a little getaway into the city. She wanted a city stay in Adelaide. That was her idea of a great holiday. So
because they're quite opposite, aren't they, in their requests?
They are, which makes it really tricky. I will say my daughter is not very excited about going to Tasmania. I think once she gets there, she'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, she really wants to go somewhere tropical, and obviously Tasmania is probably the opposite of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, going on a mountain biking adventure is such an out of the box kind of, I know, given that
Mm,
your son loves mountain biking, but like for me, I totally wouldn't even think to plan a holiday like that. So you're going to
mm,
see different things to what you normally would on a
yes.
holiday in Tasmania.
Yes, definitely. And I'm hoping that I can talk my daughter into doing some hiking while the boys
Yeah.
go mountain biking, because the mountain biking is quite gnarly over there. It's not something I'll be doing a lot
Yes.
of.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. On to our next question. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Okay, so, this is such a good question. Look, I love where we live. We live on the Fleurieu Peninsula, which is about an hour south of Adelaide on the beach, very close to the beach. It's a 5-minute walk to the beach from our house. And my husband and I traveled a lot in our 20s. Like, we spent 5 years traveling, working, adventuring our way around the world. And we always thought, we could live anywhere. Like, we could settle down somewhere else. But we always ended up coming back here. And the same, we did a year around Australia when the kids were littler. And we thought, maybe we'll find like our ideal place to live on our travels. But something always pulls us back to this area, which is where we both grew up. So
Yeah. Okay. And
I
your
would
family lives there too, don't they?
exactly. Yeah. So all
Yeah.
of our friends and family are here. The beaches are beautiful. We've got amazing food and wine. The community is amazing here as well. So really, this is my ideal place to live, except I would love for it to be a little bit warmer.
Yeah. I'm up in Brisbane, and so often if Jess and I chat on Zoom, Jess and Scott are in hoodies. That's Jess's husband, Scott, are in hoodies, and I'm in a singlet sweating with aircon on. So it's always quite funny when we have meetings.
Oh, it is. I just like we get really hot, dry summers down here,
Yeah.
but the winters just go on forever. And even in the
Yeah.
summer, we can never guarantee that it's going to be hot. Like my son's
Yes.
birthday's in December, and you can't organize like a beach party and know for sure that the weather's going to be good. So the only downside of living down here is the cold winters and what feels like fairly long winters. Although,
Yeah.
compared to places like London, it's not,
Yeah.
which I've lived in London before. And that's the thing. We have lived in lots of different places. Like we stopped a few times on our big lap around Australia. So we lived a few months in Darwin, a few months in Margaret River, a few months in Ballina near Byron. And
Yeah.
then when we were backpacking around the world in our 20s before kids, we lived in London, we lived in the Lake District, we lived on Vancouver Island, we lived in Jasper in the Rocky Mountains. So we've lived in lots of beautiful places, but something always, it's the friends and the family that always pull us back here, I think.
Yeah, of course. That sense of community is really important.
Yeah.
Okay. What is one piece of parenting advice you would give to your listeners?
Oh, well, I will just say I am not a parenting expert. And to be completely honest, I'm feeling very lost in parenting as we are in the teen years, which feels like a whole nother world of parenting compared to the younger years. But I think one thing that I would say is like to truly listen and take notice and be curious about who your children truly are rather than being attached to who you think they are or
Yeah.
what you expect them to be or what you want them to be. We hear of those stories where, parents are kind of living their own failed dreams through their kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard not to kind of encourage kids to go down certain paths based on maybe what you think they could be good at or, maybe should be doing or that sort of thing. But I think like really, really being curious and listening and taking notice, as I said, about who they are, and taking the time, no matter how busy you are, to really listen to kids. Because I think as my kids are now in the teens and going into the teens, my daughter is, they do tend to talk to you less, but I think
Yeah.
they talk, they'll open up more if they really feel heard and listened to and not judged, which is tricky. We like when we're talking to kids, or they might tell us something and we'll be like, oh, and respond or react, rather than just truly kind of, listening and being curious about what they really are sort of saying. So I don't know if I'm making much sense, but a good example of this is my son. As I said, he's going into year 10 next year, and he's decided that he wants to transfer to a trade school. And I was at first a little reluctant to, for him to make that full move. Like, there is an option to just move part-time so he can try it out and make sure he likes it. But he was adamant that he wants to do a trade. He's a bit bored and not engaged with school. He's still doing pretty well, but
Yeah.
he's bored. And so he's that real hands-on kid. And when they do something hands-on, like in science, or when he is doing woodwork or tech at school, he comes home really kind of excited. And so I've had to really like let him navigate that and go down that path, even though I am supportive of it for sure. But there's part of me is like, oh, it's you're so young to be making this big decision.
Yeah. You just
But
have to trust that he knows himself
yeah,
and what he really wants to do.
that's right. And that it's going to lead him to what he should be doing.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with a trade either. Like, it's
No.
such I feel like a lot of my family come from trades, and you can push through to grade 12, but it's just like a miserable 2-3 years when,
Yes.
you'd rather get in there, get your hands, and start learning the trade early.
Well, that's right. And this program is so amazing because you can by the time he finishes year 12, he will have his SACE, which is the South Australian Certificate of Education, plus he'll be 2 years into an apprenticeship. So
Yeah, amazing.
yeah, he's really excited. He's very driven to, he wants to make money sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and good on him. Like, he's got that drive already. So
That's right. And if
um,
we were sort of like, no, you can stay at school, you can keep going the sort of traditional route, then who knows what would happen. So that's just one example of really kind of listening to what he wants, as opposed to kind of, letting our fears of what might happen get in the way.
yeah, I think that's great advice. I don't have any kids, but I think, yeah, I'm of the same kind of mindset of like letting kids be who they actually want to be, and not following in that kind of generational cookie cutter
Yeah.
approach, where it's like, oh, my grandfather was an accountant, so you're an accountant, and I'm like, everyone's accountant.
Yes, yes. And another example, going back to what we were talking about, my kids being different, is
Yeah,
my daughter is like, me and my husband and my son are quite outdoorsy, active people, and my daughter isn't as much. And so that can really trigger me. Like, let's get out, when she says, well,
yeah,
I don't want to go to the beach. It's like, what child doesn't want to go to the beach?
yes.
But I've also got to honor who she is and what
Mm.
she enjoys doing, which can be really tricky. Like, it's not always easy to do that.
Yeah, and there's no manual when it comes to
Oh,
parenting. You never know what you're going to get the next,
oh,
one day's different to the next.
exactly. And they change so much as they grow up as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
a tricky journey, that's for sure.
Okay, so keeping into like the family theme, someone asked, have your family and yourself always lived this lifestyle, or was there a before Natural Super Kids life?
Oh, I'm gonna have to let all my secrets out on this one.
Liked this question.
So what I will say, and I'm taking this to mean like the Natural Super Kids life, like the healthy lifestyle that we promote, and encourage and inspire and support people to kind of to make those healthy changes. So what I will say is I was actually kind of more strict, if that's the right word, in this way when the kids were littler. And as they've grown up, I've become more comfortable with having a more balanced approach and somewhat letting go of those, perfect nutrition ideals. I think you have to with teenagers for sure,
Yeah.
because they get their independence and you don't have full control over what they're doing, what they're eating anymore. And that's just inevitable because we want to be bringing up independent kids, right?
Yeah.
So I was much kind of stricter with nutrition and health when my kids were littler. And now I am a bit more laxed for sure. I remember, we were talking about this the other day actually as I was packing lunch boxes, and we were talking about the fact that I used to send the kids to kindy with like mashed sardines and boiled eggs kind of all this really
Nothing like
healthy stuff.
sardines in a lunchbox.
What a cruel mum. And I remember my son coming home going, Mum, so-and-so said my lunchbox stinks. Can you not pack that fish in my lunchbox anymore? Up until that point, he loved sardines,
Yeah.
so that's just an example of I would never dream, I would never be allowed to pack sardines in a lunchbox anymore now my kids
Yeah.
are high
And I guess
school.
like you've been a naturopath for 20 years. That's a long time. Well, 20, more
Mm-hmm.
than 20 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
22?
more than 20. Yeah,
Yeah.
22.
So you've kind of lived this life for a while, 2
Yeah,
decades.
definitely. And what I've found also is that, being too perfectionist about everything actually leads to a lot of
Yeah.
stress and can
Yeah.
kind of socially isolate you from people because they don't want to invite you, or you won't go to that party because the food's not going to be perfectly healthy, all of that sort of thing. And so I think a more balanced approach is actually healthier in a lot of ways. Um, and then prior to children, well, that was a whole nother story because in my teens and 20s, I did not live a very healthy lifestyle. There was lots of partying, lots of drinking. I went through a stage where I was going to, rave dance parties every weekend. When we were traveling, my now husband and I, we got a lot of live-in pub jobs in the UK. And so we would
Yeah.
live upstairs with a whole heap of other Aussies, work in the pub, like work, really late nights. Alcohol, there was too much alcohol and there was not very healthy food choices either because we were really living on a very tight budget. We were being paid ridiculously low amount of money, like £4 an hour or something. But we had our accommodation and all our food included, but that was pub food.
Yeah.
So, I lived like that for months. I remember I used to go to the shop and get, some fruit because that wasn't even part of, our diet. So my diet has not always been good, but that's given me that contrast of knowing how good you can feel when you eat well and live a healthy lifestyle compared to when you don't.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay. The next question is, what's your favorite memory?
Favorite memory. Oh, so the first one that comes to mind, obviously, so many, like could go way back into childhood. I had a very, lovely, stable childhood. But the first one that came to mind is it's a travel one, of course. This was my very first overseas travel experience, and I set off. I finished my studies as a naturopath and went off traveling and backpacking the world. And our first stop was as camp counselors
Oh, yeah,
in
cool.
the US. Yeah, so me and my now husband got a job working in on a camp called Bar 717 Ranch. So it was a very grassroots kind of basic camp. It wasn't one of those, where you water ski on the lake and all of that
Yeah.
sort of thing. We literally slept on platforms, like planks of wood, just with a roof and a back, like an open cabin. And were in charge of groups of kids that came mainly from Los Angeles and San Francisco. So they were kind of upper class, a bit snotty kids, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them. And we weren't much older. Like I was literally 23. Some of these kids were sort of, well, I think 16, 17. And we worked as lifeguards and slept on these platforms. We got put on these outdoor adventures, like taking groups of kids out for overnight camping adventures. I was way out of my league, way out of my comfort zone. I think they just assumed these guys are Aussies, they know the
Yeah.
outdoors. There was bears and all sorts of things,
Gosh.
snakes, rattlesnakes. But this was like I said, it was my first overseas experience, and I didn't travel much as a kid. And so it just opened my eyes to the big wide world out there. And we made such good, strong relationships. Some of these people we still keep in contact with other camp counselors that were from, the US, Germany, Russia, the UK, Spain, and we became really close. And the one memory that comes to mind is when we were all leaving camp after, I think it was 3 or 4 months sort of living, which doesn't sound like a lot of time, but we just became so close because we were all away from home and it was very kind of intense experience, I guess. And we had this day where we all went whitewater rafting together and then all said goodbye and went our separate ways. And it was just this bittersweet kind of feeling of like, we've just had the most incredible experience together. And now we're all kind of going off on other travel adventures.
Yeah. I remember I wanted to do that camp council thing, but it
Yeah.
just seemed way too out of my comfort zone. I was like, I'm not very outdoorsy. I don't think this is for me.
Yeah, well, do you know, I think that is what kind of made me outdoorsy because I
Yeah.
was not an outdoorsy kid. Like my family wasn't outdoorsy, but I feel like that camp experience, just being thrown into having to do that, and I loved it, is what kind of led me into just really loving
That
the
little sense of
outdoors.
adventure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sparked that
yeah.
sense of adventure.
And I think
Awesome.
now, because I spend all day, every day in front of my computer, running an online business, I just really need that kind of outdoor adventure time when I'm not working, like whether that's on the weekend or when we go away. Yeah.
Yeah. You get cabin fever working from home a lot.
Yes, you do. We know about
Yeah.
that, don't we?
Yeah. Go a bit nutty. Okay. Someone's asked, what's your greatest achievement?
Oh, well, I've got to say my kids, don't I?
Yeah.
So
Outside of the kids, I guess, because that's a given.
it's kind of a given, isn't it? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when I look at my kids now, almost 15, almost 13, I'm like, and I'm sure all parents can relate, like I cannot believe that I created this person, like physically, but also all of the, like just developed them all of these years that they've been living. I would say so my kids and my marriage. So I've been with my husband. I was 17 when we got together. I'm now 44. So I've been with him for way more than half my life.
Were you
Um,
high school sweethearts or met just after school?
yeah, I was just finishing high school, but he's a bit older. He's nearly 5 years older than me. So he was well out. He was the cool older guy with the car and the job. And
Yeah.
he had long dreadlocks. He played in a band. He
Yeah.
still
Okay.
loves music. So it was kind of that sort of set up. And so it took us a lot of years to get married. So we traveled and we got married in 2016. So we were together a long time before we actually got married. But then moving on from that, it's this really, I'm so proud of this life that we've now created where we work together. He's a integral part of Natural Super Kids as well, like obviously much more behind the scenes. So we both work full time in the business, but we've also kind of overcome those societal gender kind of
Yes.
norms.
Yes.
And he basically came to work in what was my business and left his job to come home and sort of lighten the load when it comes to the kids and all the house stuff. So I'm so proud that we have kind of created this life where we're both very involved with the kids and we're both
Mhm.
here when they get home from school, even though they're not that interested in us anymore now that they're teenagers. But just our presence,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
is so important in these teen years. And, it's allowed us to do things like travel Australia for a year, and have the travel adventures that I've talked quite a bit about already today, because we've created this life where we've got freedom in terms of we get to control when we work. Although, it can be that there can be a lot of downsides to working and living and being married together as well. Like, it's not all roses and sunshine, as you can imagine. But I'm, really proud that we've kind of really like stepped out of the norm, and we got a lot of judgment, when we initially sort of took that step, in terms of him leaving his job and sort of becoming more involved in the house side of things and the kids side of things. Like, it's crazy that there's still a lot of judgment that can happen, with that kind of shift within a house.
Yeah, because it's just
Mm.
so normal for, the male figure to go out and be the income
Mhm.
earner. And I guess for me as a woman and a employee, like I find it so um yeah, inspirational that you have made those shifts and
Mm.
it works so well for your family. So
Mm.
yeah, and it's, as you said, such a nice opportunity for your children to have. I know it's not easy for everybody, but it's such an achievement for you to be able to provide that for your kids as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we, like you said, we've worked at it. It hasn't been easy. And it just
Mm,
drives me crazy when people say, oh, you're so lucky that you both get to work from home. Like that whole
yeah.
lucky, yes, definitely. Like, I acknowledge our privilege for sure. But also we've worked for this and we've made some pretty risky decisions to get to this point that we are at now. So it's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't come overnight. You've been a naturopath for 22 years. You've had natural super kids for, what, 6 years? So
Mhm.
it's not like it's an overnight thing. It's taken a
Exactly.
lot of steps to get here.
Yes, it certainly
Um,
has.
okay, and then I guess our last question is what's next for natural super kids?
Oh, well, this is a good question. Like, at the end of 2022, heading into 2023. So, I guess the thing that I'm most excited about with Natural Super Kids now is that it's so much bigger than me. Like, I started Natural Super Kids, just me, one woman show, doing everything. And now, we've got an amazing team. Like, obviously you included, Mel, and other people that are really important in our team. And I just love that it's bigger and more than me now, like the different ideas and the different ways that we can support our clients and our members, the ways that we work with people, like all of that sort of inspiration and ideas come through the team. So I'm just really excited to continue like growing and evolving Natural Super Kids to be a brand and a company that helps to inspire and support families to live healthier, really, and to get to the bottom and address the underlying causes of their kids' health issues. Because unfortunately, these kids' health issues that we see so often at Natural Super Kids, the eczema, the allergies, the mood and behavioral and sleep and gut issues are becoming more and more common. And we're all just really passionate about helping families to address those things, and get to the bottom of what's going on, as opposed to just that band-aid solution that's so often given through other means. Um, so really, I just really want to be continuing to create helpful and inspiring content for our Natural Super Kids Club members. And also, on our social media, in our podcast, we've got some really exciting topics coming up next year. And the thing that I love about running a membership like we do with Natural Super Kids Club is that we can get creative within the one container, because there's so many different ideas of ways we can support people and information that we want to share, but we can do that within the club, as opposed to, continuing to come up with a new idea for another program or another, package for clients or whatever it might be. We do have some exciting new things coming next year. I've been doing the Kids Gut Health Masterclass for a lot of years now, and we are going to be changing that up next year. So we're going to have a new free masterclass coming out in March, all going well. Now this is going to keep me accountable now that I've announced that.
Yeah.
And we're going to be expanding and growing the team next year. And the other thing that I love is that, giving other practitioners like you, Mel, really good, flexible work opportunities. So I get really excited about that too.
Yeah. And I mean, as an employee, I've worked, in multiple different kind of areas, and the opportunities that Natural Super Kids give us, and you as an employer and a founder give us, is just the best. It really is. It's just so flexible. It's, one of the biggest things I commend you on is, as a founder and a business owner, is your boundaries that you put in place for us as well. I think that's, you allow us to kind of live our best lives. And I think it's something to really commend you on as a founder of a company as well. So as an employee, just wanted to say thanks.
That's so lovely to hear, because that's so like I said, the business gives me that life of flexibility. And I want to be passing that on to the team as well. We don't have to be all, I don't know, that flexibility is really important, and that freedom to be able to choose your own hours. I mean, for me, it doesn't matter when you work, as long as you're getting done what needs to be done, it doesn't matter to me when that is. So thank you for saying that. And that just really warms my heart, that feedback, because Sarah, our practitioner, said to me a few months ago, I'm really getting a lot of career satisfaction. I think she said it's in a bit of a different way, but I was like, oh, that just makes me feel so happy that I'm being able to offer those opportunities to other practitioners as well, because it's hard to get going as a practitioner on your own, and not everyone's interested in the business side of things. So to be able to give opportunities to practitioners that they can, really shine and utilize their skills within the company, Natural Super Kids. I just love that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the end. Is there anything you wanted to say to the listeners or tell the listeners to finish up and wrap up this podcast episode?
Well, thank you. That has been fun. Hopefully I didn't overshare.
No, you did well.
So I just want to say thank you to you for coming on and interviewing. I know this is a bit out of your comfort zone as well. So thanks, Mel. And I love that about you. You're always willing to jump in and give things a try, even if you've never done them before. And I just want to say thank you to our listeners. This is 2 years into this podcast now. We absolutely love sharing information in this way. Well, I do. And I just want to say Mel's a big part of this podcast as well. She writes the show notes. She secures a lot of our really great guests and comes up with ideas for different topics, because as you can imagine, coming up with a podcast topic every single week, sometimes the creativity is what else can we talk about?
Yeah. So if you have any guests or any topics in mind, please email them through, because we will hunt down some guests for you.
Definitely.
We're here to kind of give you the information that you want, rather than repeating the same information.
Yeah, such a good point. And Mel's good at hunting people down and getting them to agree to a podcast interview. So I just want to thank all of our listeners, particularly our avid listeners that listen to all the episodes, or even if you're just listening to the odd episode. Maybe this is your first episode you've ever listened to. I really hope that you enjoy the podcast. And I just want to say Merry Christmas, because this is our last podcast for 2022. We've got some exciting guests coming on for 2023. So yeah, just thank you for your support, everybody.
Yeah, and congratulations to Jess on the 100th episode and 100,000 downloads. So, yeah, we'll see you in 2023.
See you, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.